When I was 24 years old, I went to a Unitarian Universalist young adult conference in Kankakee, Illinois. I was living nearby at the time, and it seemed like a great way to get to know other UU young people from all across the country. Everyone brought a tent. There were meals in the mess hall. It felt like camp, but for young adults. And in order to be there, you had to be between the ages of 18 and 35, which is what the Unitarian Universalist Association defines as young adulthood. At 24, I was at the younger side of that, but wasn't super young like the few college kids who were there. At the very least, I knew I wasn't like the 35-year-olds. They were old enough that they had an entire dedicated ceremony for them at the end of the week, a goodbye ceremony. And on Unitarian Universalism, we try and mark transitions, especially from one period of our lives to the next. We celebrate our high school seniors through a ceremony called bridging, where they, metaphorically, but also sometimes literally, cross over a bridge from adolescence into young adulthood. Now, at the Young Adult Conference, a similar ritual was performed for the young adults who were 35. They were bridging out of young adulthood. All of us young adults were on one side, and on the other were the 35-year-olds who walked across the metaphorical bridge to stand there. As they did, they spoke about their time as young people, the challenges, the fond memories, the milestones. There was disbelief that so much time had passed, and gratitude for the friendships they developed. And there was grief. It was lonely on that other side. Open the glass and see no one standing there. They couldn't come back next year. The future was unknown and uncertain. Who were they asked, if they weren't young anymore? Now, as a 24-year-old, I remember being glad I wasn't 35 going on 36. It seemed like ages away. And it also seemed like no fun. Now, 2 weeks ago, I turned 36. I left young adulthood and entered whatever this next stage is. Now, this life transition is not one that our society is good at honoring. There are certain life changes that perhaps collectively build into middle age. You get married, you get a stable job, you have kids, you take care of your parents versus the other way around. But none of them is necessary for this transition to happen. Unlike for high school or college or retirement, we don't really have rituals or rites of passage or even language to articulate the shift from young adults to middle age. This is a loss, I think, both for us as individuals making that transition and those who live on, and also for our society more collectively. Now, my life has mirrored some of what society says that leaving young adulthood should be like. I'm married, have a stable job. We don't have children yet, which for many is a middle-aged landmark. We might be trying to buy a home if we didn't live in the New York City market, so expensive, and have the parsonage here that you all provide us. But realistically, the transition into middle age doesn't really depend on achieving anything. It is often something that just happens to us. Part of it is that our bodies literally change. We begin to feel the limits of our strength, a decline that will only accelerate. Our hair gets a little thinner. Our biological clocks insist we have children before it's too late. Doctors tell us to start watching our cholesterol. But beyond all that, this transition requires us to think a little bit about ourselves differently. It's almost a spiritual change, I think. Who are we if we are no longer young? One of the most memorable conversations I had about getting older was with someone a few years back. She was in her 50s and had recently lost her job. Trying to get back into the job market was tough. She was struggling to find new work, to stay afloat. Despite many years of experience and fine references, that they had. They were being overlooked by employer after employer. It was hard enough given the financial strain they were under, but difficult also because it seemed so age-related. She told me how different it was when she was younger, how hopeful she had been then, like anything was possible, like she had all the time in the world. She told me how it wasn't just her naivete, but how young people are treated differently because they are young. Young people are seen as having potential, possibility. No matter the mistakes they make, or what they don't know or aren't good at, they can always change or grow and learn because they have time. They possess the promise of becoming something they are not, and thus are given the opportunity to become it. The difference, she said, was that at 50, no one saw that in her anymore. They saw a 50-year-old woman with graying hair and a maternal look and thought, this is who she is. This is who she will always be. She wasn't becoming anything else. There was no untapped or unrealized potential, no chance at developing or surprising anyone. Her weaknesses were no longer waved away, but defining for her. If she was good enough to be successful, it seemed, she would have been so already. As she shared this, she started to tear up. She felt trapped, misunderstood, and unfairly typecast. Now, this experience of my friend is so common in middle age. They say that old age is not for the faint of heart, but I think the same can be said for middle age. The gift of having potential is revoked, and we risk believing in our hearts that we cannot change. There is a reason why middle age is statistically one of the most unhappy periods of a person's life. Young adulthood is okay. It's not easy. I know, I just came out of it. But old age is actually kind of good, according to the research. People are statistically happiest when they are retired. But middle age is a different beast. It's a time period that conjures up in our hearts and in society's expectations deep ambivalence or even resistance to becoming it. We don't like being called middle age. Our society presents it as stifling, the end of virility, a time defined by the heavy weight of family responsibility. We need to learn to redefine what middle age is, because we all deserve, whether we're young people looking towards it, people in the heart of middle age, we deserve to live lives and understand our life as having the potential for hope and life-giving. We deserve to live through periods of our life that we embrace with a full heart. Now, obviously, I'm biased now because as someone turning 36, I have special interest in this, but it's important for everyone. For me, the answer comes from my own young adulthood. I spent most of it, as many of us do, trying to get where we are now. For me, that was married with a stable job. And while I'm very happy with that, now that I have most of what I'm looking for, I've learned that new questions simply replace the older ones. I used to wonder, can I be what I want to be? Am I good enough for the job I want? Can I have the career I want? Can I find a partner who loves me? Am I even lovable? And now I have to ask, now that I know the answers to those questions, now what? If this is the life I have, and this is the life I will have, is this the life that I want? It's easy to always be on the move towards a goal. Any discontent or unhappiness can be attributed to not yet having attained that goal. It's comforting to be young sometimes because there is such a wide future ahead, and you can assume that happiness will just emerge sometime in the future. There's enough time to figure it all out, to get that wisdom, enlightenment that we want. Middle age destroys these assumptions, which are so easy to fall back to when things are difficult, because they place the burden of our happiness outside of ourselves. It forces us to question middle age, to question the salvific promise of getting a perfect job, of falling in love, of having kids, or to question the simple belief that our future will be better just because. Now, I'm not saying these things can't make us happy, but middle age teaches us that happiness cannot rest in them alone. Not through their power are our lives made meaningful. The gift of growing older is this. We learn we are mortal, and that what we are taught leads us to a fulfilling life often does not. And so we must take ownership of it ourselves. That no job, no partnership, no child by themselves can give us the happiness we seek or make us that person we yearn to become. Only we can do that. In middle age, because of its relative stability and its proximity to old age and our mortality, moves us with new urgency towards who we need to be. We learn in middle age that we cannot take our happiness for granted, and we have to take that into our own hands. The classic midlife crisis is a response to this realization, that if we don't change into who we want to be, then when? But it doesn't have to be a crisis or act out in unhealthy, destructive ways. Middle age need not be depressing or static or confining. Instead, it should and can be a time of tremendous creativity, experimentation, and I think invigorating self-discovery. A time to really, really work on ourselves and uncover what gives us deep, lasting, and life-giving joy. The good news of growing older is it's never too late to be who we want to be. We can always start again, start something new, become that paleontologist we wanted to be. Life doesn't end at 36, despite what my 24-year-old self may have worried. Not only 24-year-olds can hope for the future and have potential for change. We all can, no matter how old we are. This is the gift of middle age, of growing older. So young adults out there, don't be afraid. Middle age isn't that bad. And those of you who are middle-aged and above, this is the time to embrace who you are. We can do it together. Let us get started. May it be so, and amen.